Good evening, everyone. My name is Mark Baltzell. I'm the statewide salmon and steelhead manager with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. We're going to give it a couple minutes here just to get everybody on board, get our audio visual materials ready to go, make sure we have our presentation up and ready to go. So please pause with us just for a couple minutes and we'll get her going soon. Thank you. Just checking in with Leah. Leah, did you see the message about the screen sharing? Awesome.
I didn't even need to answer.
Thank you, Leah. Appreciate your help. So again, welcome everybody. We are here as part of our 2021 North of Falcon process. Our specific focus of tonight's meeting is Willapa Bay Fisheries. Next slide, please. Tonight, we're going to go over why we're here. We're going to introduce you to staff and people on the line. Going to talk a little bit about the North of Falcon process, go back into the salmon forecasts that we went over in late February, just to make sure everybody's up to speed. Talk about the 2021 management objectives. We got a little bit of guidance from the Fish and Wildlife Commission on that last week, so we'll go over that. Next slide, please. So as I said, thanks again for joining us. We're here tonight as part of the North of Falcon process. Tonight, we're going to be presenting information about the forecasted returns, about what that might mean for fisheries, and allow you to ask questions about that. And then mostly why we're here is to hear your thoughts and ideas about the fisheries this year, things we might want to consider as we're crafting these seasons, potential seasons, and modeling those and thinking about the different scenarios that we might want to think about for this year. Next slide, please. So again, my name is Mark Baltzell. I am the statewide salmon and steelhead manager. Kyle Addix is our intergovernmental salmon manager. And Marlene Wagner is our new Willapa Bay Grace Harbor Fishery Policy Lead. Our regional structure part of this is Regional Director Larry Phillips. James Losey is our Regional Fish Program Manager. Rob Allen runs the hatchery side of things in Region 6. Jody Pope's our district bio here for the Willapa Bay District. And Barb McClellan and Lyle Jennings are the bios that work underneath Jody. Next slide, please. So I'm sure folks are pretty familiar. The ones who have been here with us in the past are pretty familiar with the complexity that we have to deal with when we're crafting and managing salmon here in Washington. We have a number of different considerations and management constraints that we have to think about as we're crafting fisheries each year. Part of that is through the Pacific Salmon Treaty and the Pacific Salmon Commission. We have different guidelines and management criteria that we need to meet on different stocks each year collectively. We also have our domestic process in the Pacific Fishery Management Council that oversees fisheries off the coast 3 to 200 miles. Those meetings also where they manage those fisheries off the coast for Washington, Oregon, California. We also have our domestic inside processes where we work with Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife and our treaty tribes in the management of fisheries within Puget Sound and the coast and Columbia River area. Next slide, please. So this is another just quick and dirty breakdown of the North of Falcon process that we do each year annually. Uh, Back in January, biologists start getting all their information together and work on forecasts. We try to get those wrapped up and finished up by the latter parts of February. We presented those to folks right around the 27th, I believe, for Willapa. After we present the forecast, we go through processes, different modeling and whatnot to determine if there's harvestable surplus. And then what we do is model fisheries to determine where we might have constraints, stocks of concern, or weak stocks that we need to manage to. Those models also help us predict what we'll catch as we prosecute those fisheries. And it's an iterative process. The steps we're in right now, 3 and 4, where we're doing that over and over again as we go through this preseason to try to center in, make sure we're crafting our fisheries in a way that meets our conservation objectives and provides opportunity where we can. And again, number 5, depending on the area, we negotiate with our treaty tribes and other states for fair sharing of the resource. Next slide, please. Just give a little quick and dirty overview of our meeting schedule. These are the meetings we've had to date. Again, we were here to go over the forecast on the 25th with folks. We just wrapped up the Pacific Fishery Management Council meetings last week, where we were able to set ocean options for this year's fisheries. Yesterday, we had our first North of Falcon meeting following the Pacific Fishery Management Council meeting. We had some breakout meetings for Puget Sound centric fisheries. We also had a quick breakout meeting for coastal fisheries well there. Tonight's our Willapa Bay discussion. Next week on the 23rd is the PFMC Ocean Management Public Hearing. There is a link to that, and you can also find it at pcouncil.org, which is the council's website. The information will be there as well. Next slide, please. Also next week, we have our Grays Harbor fishery discussion on the 24th from 6 to 8. Again, it'll be a Zoom meeting just like this. You can follow that link in the materials there. Following that, on the 31st, we have a second North of Falcon meeting. That's where we have already done some modeling with our co-managers on the inside. We start to refine those models a little bit more as we head into the final PFMC meeting. Before we head into the final PFMC meeting, we'll be re-engaging with you on April 5th to try to nail down the preferred fishery options for 2021. Again, all these materials, all the meeting schedule and links, as well as handouts for tonight's meeting. Probably should have talked about that sooner. There are handouts for tonight's meeting on our website currently. So if you want to go check that out and have those available to you as we go through the meeting tonight, staff will be referring to those materials as we continue our discussion through the evening. Next slide, please. Just want to go through a little bit of the rulemaking process for the department. Many of you are familiar with this, so we just been filling this in as part of our presentation this year, so people have a good idea of how we do things. The rulemaking process for salmon seasons actually starts in January. We file what's called a CR 101. And that kind of that's a public notice that says, hey, we're going to open up these rules for consideration of changes for this year. After a minimum of 45 days in the rules, we publish a CR 102. And essentially that 102 says this is our preferred changes for rules. We then take written comments and have a public hearing, consider any modifications to those rules. Or if we identify any errors. The CR 103 contains a concise explanatory statement about the changes that were made within those rules. And then after the director signs those, they're published and effective 31 days after we file those. Next slide, please. So this process that we're going through right here, the North of Falcon process, is kind of this in between that happens between the 101 and the 102. We have this extensive North of Falcon process where we're sharing information and collecting public input as part of that rulemaking process. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the Pacific Fishery Management Council had its meetings that wrapped up last week where they set ocean alternatives for this year. So we have those laid out here for both Chinook and Coho. Not sure I need to read all the numbers to you, but you will notice that there's a 0 option for both Chinook and Coho, a 0 fishing option. This was primarily for consideration. We have really poor coastal coho stocks forecasted for this year. There is great concern for the conservation of those fish. And at the end of the day, the state and the treaty tribes wanted to preserve all of our options and have them all available to us as we continued through the preseason process. Next slide, please. This is really just some graphical looks. On the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see Chinook ocean quotas, and on the right, you'll see Coho ocean quotas. And this is just going back to 2003. So I don't know how easy it is to see on the screen, but the purple bars represent non-treaty quotas, and the red lines and the red dots represent treaty quotas. So you'll see those again on the left for Chinook and on the right for Coho, going back to 2003 all the way through last year, 2020. With that, I am going to turn the presentation, next slide please, over to Marlene.
Thank you, Mark. So now I'll just start giving you our Willapa specific information here, starting with some recent Willapa Bay trends. This slide is looking at trends from the years 2010 to 2021 for Chinook, Coho, and chum. Note on each figure that the number of fish is depicted along the y-axis with the year along the x or the bottom axis. For each slide, you can see the run size, which is the terminal run size in a brownish red, and the spawning escapement in a lighter purple color. The run size for 2021 is signified with a red dot, and these red dots are preliminary estimates. You can also see the escapement goals for each species, signified by the horizontal dashed green line and green number to the right of the plot area. The dashed vertical gray line also shows when the policy was implemented before the 2015 season. So starting on the bottom left are Chinook Trends from 2010 to 2021. And what you can see here is that the run size is below the escapement goal of 4,353 fish since the implementation of policy. And further, that the escapement goal for Chinook has not been reached since 2010. On the top right, you can see run sizes and spawner escapements for Coho from 2010 to 21 again, with the red dot in the run size line for this year showing a predicted run size using ocean age 3 fish. Since policy implementation, we've only met the escapement goal of 13,600 fish once in 2016, and we see overall reduced abundances of Coho. This isn't Willapa specific. It's a trend we're seeing similar low abundances statewide. On the bottom left, you see run sizes and escapement trends for chum from 2010 to 2021. Run sizes and spawner escapement are closer together here, and we have made escapement goals of 35,400 fish for 3 consecutive years and 4 out of the last 5 years, and every year since policy implementation, except for 2017. Next slide, please. And so here's a table showing our 2021 Willapa Bay forecasts, including natural and hatchery origin fish for Chinook, Coho, and chum. The aggregate spawner forecast for natural Chinook is 3,924 fish, 30,470 hatchery fish for a total of 34,394 overall Chinook. The aggregate spawner forecast for natural Coho is 19,040 fish, 61,614 hatchery fish, and a total Coho number of 80,654 fish. The aggregate spawner forecast for natural chum is 38,013 fish, 1,064 hatchery fish for a total of 39,077 chum. Next slide, please. And so now we'll move into some management objectives. The management objectives for Chinook for the coming year, 2021, are based on guidance just received again from the Fish and Wildlife Commission last Friday, March 12th, for Willapa Bay, and they are based on staff recommendations. And so we're directed to actively manage not to exceed a 20% impact rate for natural origin Chinook on the Nacelle and Willapa rivers, suspend time and area restrictions for commercial fisheries south of commercial area 2T or the North Bay. We will determine daily limits for recreational fisheries that achieve management objectives for Chinook and Coho, while also providing for a full recreational season that is intended to achieve recreational priority for Chinook harvest. So in August to January 31st freshwater season that is consistent with what has been done in the past to achieve this harvest priority for Chinook. We will also continue the development and implementation of test fisheries and in-season update models. Next slide, please. We did not receive any interim guidance for Coho and Chum, and so our management objectives are straight from the Willapa Bay Salmon Management Policy, C3622. For Coho, in priority order, our first objective is to achieve the aggregate spawner goal of 13,600 wild Coho, and then prioritize commercial fishing opportunities during the period of September 16th through October 14th, and then to provide recreational fishing opportunities. For Chum, you'll remember from the previous slide showing the Willapa Bay trends for Chum that we've made the escapement goal 4 out of 5 years and for 3 years in a row. This means that the penalty box language is not in effect this year. So our objectives are to manage to achieve the aggregate spawner goal for naturally spawning fish of 35,400, provide commercial fishing opportunities, and then to provide recreational fishing opportunities. Next slide, please. So that's sort of the end of our formal presentation. Before we start showing you some modeling, I want to point out all your north of Falcon related public comments can be submitted electronically at the link here. And also included is the email address to join our Willapa Bay distribution list. And so for now, I'd like to take any questions that are specific to the presentation. And then later we will start taking fisheries suggestions. Thank you.
So again, folks who aren't familiar with the Zoom on the phone, you can use *6 to unmute yourself, and it's *9 to use the raised hand feature. I see Tim has his hand up. Go ahead, Tim. I think you're unmuted, Tim. Go ahead. Tim, if you're talking, we can't hear you. Tim, I'm going to go ahead and mute you and see if you can't get your audio figured out. I don't know if there's anything we can do to help Tim, Leah, on your end.
So he was unmuted on our end. I'm guessing it's his speaker. If he's on a phone, might want to try the *9 again.
Is it *9?
Tim is unmuted again.
Tim, I might suggest maybe trying to log off the meeting and log back in and see if that might fix the audio issues. I'm going to go ahead and mute Tim again and move on to the next person with their hand up. It's a 360 number ending in 932. And
I have requested you to unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello?
go ahead, we can hear you.
Okay, this is Ross Barkhurst. I had a question that relates to this. I have a problem getting reading on my computer screen, but you show in this Model A, you show 8,000 some Chinook for Rex and 1,401 for commercials. And in the earlier thing on email, you showed like 8,000, 2,000 last year. And I have to question the 8,000 and some last year, or caught last season by Rex, because first off, the cards have not been submitted. And so if you use pre-orders, there was here, the limit in the NEMA had been reduced from 4 to 2. And the NAZL, a good 2/3 of the recreational fishing was closed. And so, Michael.
So Ross, I don't know exactly what's going on, but you're cutting in and out quite a bit. We're getting like every second or third word, not really hearing your questions very well.
My question is, where do you come up with 8,000 Chinook for recreational fishermen for last year or for this year? How do you come up with that? Because the season was closed in the NAZL last year.
So Ross, was there a specific
that's not a
slide
good
that
number.
you saw that information on?
It was the slide that was sent out by Ms. Mcmillan a day or two ago that showed the results for last year. So 8,000 and some for Rex and 2,000 and some for nets. And for last year, okay? And the Rex have not submitted their punch cards, and so that number had to have been synthesized somehow. And I'm just saying that's not a good number because recreational fishing was closed in a lot of the NAZL last year. The limit had been reduced from 4 to 2 in the NEMA, and I wonder where you got that number.
So I didn't quite catch what species we were talking about, but maybe Barb
Chinook.
knows.
Talking fall Chinook,
Fall Chinook.
yes. Last year, how did you come up with the number caught by the recreational fishers in the Willapa Basin?
So I'll take a first stab at this, Ross, and then I'm not sure if you're talking about the freshwater fishery or not, but we do have sampling and monitoring programs in place in the sport fishery in the basin where we come up with a catch estimate in season. If we're talking about
Yes,
the
I
freshwater
understand
fishery,
that. I'm talking totals. You showed totals, 8,000 and some.
Mark, maybe I can help with this one.
thank you, Jody.
Yeah, so thanks, Ross, for your question. This is, I think what you're referring to is a recent year average that we've used as a placeholder. So that's why these run reconstructions aren't yet finalized as we're waiting for our CRC data to come back in. So I hope that
Right, and so
answers
my
your
point-
question.
So my point is the run reconstruction using past years is not accurate because there was a big stretch of river closed for Chinook during the Chinook run last year. This is because if you use the last several years, there used to be a limit of 4 and the limit, and this year it was 2. And so that's not a good number.
So Ross, I hear what you're saying, and thank you for that. I think what I'd like to do is, since this is a specific question about a specific number, I'd like to maybe move on from this conversation right now because we have a lot of information to cover tonight. And it seems like something that maybe we could cover offline.
Well, I don't think so. I asked that question because it leads into the one model I've seen for this year already, Model A, which shows 8,000 to 1,000 and some yet to commercial. And
So,
once
Ross,
again,
we have-
I'd at
Ross-
least like to know what your assumption on the season was for that.
I hear you. So Ross,
Averages in the past.
Ross, we're not to the modeling section yet. So what I'd like to do is wait until we even have staff that addresses the piece of paper that you're talking about. So I'm asking you to
Very
please
good.
hold
Thank
your
you.
question, and we will get to your question in a minute when we get to that part of the presentation. Thank you. Norm, I see you have your hand up.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, Norm. Go ahead.
The reason I raised my hand is because a comment was made to use the feature on the screen to unmute ourselves, and that is not being displayed. So there's no option on this side to unmute ourselves.
Hi, Norm. This is Leah. I just answered someone back in the question and the Q&A. But because it's a webinar, if you raise your hand, I will give you permission to speak on the computer, and then you will be able to unmute yourself after that.
The reason I asked the question is so that all participants can understand what they need to do in order to communicate. Because most of us are used to having Zoom meetings where you do have that microphone feature down there that you can unmute yourself. So now we know that you'll be doing that for us. Thank you, Leah. That was my question. Bye.
Norm, really appreciate your question for clarity. So Tim, I see you on here twice. I'd like to get back to you if you have the ability to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
I think I fixed that problem, Mark.
Okay. Do you want to try again, Tim? So I think part of the problem, Tim, is that you're coming in on two different devices. And that's what's causing that feedback and loud noise. So I would suggest if you're on two, mute one before you try to get on the other one. Tim, did you want to try again? Okay, well, hopefully Tim can get his stuff worked out. I am going to come back to Ross. And I'm going to ask, Chad Herring has joined us tonight. And I'm going to ask Chad to address Ross's question, please.
Thanks, Mark. I think I can provide a little clarity here. So Ross, as you are aware, we have marine recreational monitoring that's active that occurs within season, but we don't have active monitoring for freshwater fisheries. So those rely on CRC estimates in order to have catch estimates and impact estimates from that. We don't have those currently for 2020. What we do place in the run reconstruction is a recent year average as just a placeholder. All 2020 run reconstructions are denoted as preliminary, as they were in the presentation that you are referencing, that you received from Marlene earlier. Those will be updated with the final numbers as we get to them. I realized that there were some changes in the fishery in 2020 that would make that estimate, that recent year average that's put in there as a placeholder, would be biased high. We know that, but no analyses, no modeling, nothing was done using those numbers yet. They don't play into any 2021 forecast models or planning models until those run reconstructions become final. So we're about, so all the data that's used in any of those decision-making tools only goes through 2019. 2020 was shown in the presentation as just an indication of roughly where we are, once again, denoted as preliminary, and those numbers will get updated when they come in. And then those numbers will be used in forecasting and planning models next year's north of Falcon. So we're always and always have been at this about 18-month lag, 24-month lag between finalized run reconstructions and just having some preliminary numbers. So hope that.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just that this is different when the Chinook River was closed, so it'll cause a bigger delta than normal.
Absolutely.
At some point, hopefully you can take that into account. I don't know how it got on my computer screen, but it says 2021 Model A run summary. Policy, Willapa Bay expected harvest, recreational, 8,143. And so apparently that hasn't been dialed in yet. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Chad. We're going to try again with Mr. Hamilton. Tim, are you available? Well, keep trying, I guess. So Marlene or Jody, were we going to present something else other than this next?
Yes, we're going to hand it off to Jody Pope to go over our first model.
Thank you, Marlene.
Give me just a second here. Okay, so some of you will recognize this. This is a handout that you should have received through our distribution email. And if you didn't, please just shoot us an email, or if you want to be added to receive these in your email, please, let us know. So this is the back side of your handout. The front side of this has your the TAM model with lots of lovely colors on it. And this is the back side of that handout. And as you can see, there's a lot of information on this page. So I'm going to briefly walk you through this. This is the summary from the TAM, referred to as the Terminal Area Management Model. This is a model that Willapa Bay fishery managers use to model different fisheries packages that are suggested by you folks on the phone and other members of the public. And really this effort tonight is to help provide you meaningful information to understand where we stand today. So just looking at this, this slide, if you look to the left, you see 3 blue highlighted areas. The top one being Chinook, the middle one being Coho, and the last one being Chum. And in each one of those sections, it's broken down even further. So you can see pre-season run size by each one of our systems, Willapa North, Nema Palix, Nacelle Bear, and so on. And that's for hatchery and for natural fish. And in each one of those species, you'll see commercial catch, commercial impacts, recreational catch, marine harvest rates, escapement, and total exploitation rate for each Chinook, Coho, and Chum. And it's important to note here, and folks that are, veterans on the phone would know that when they see those green boxes, there's 4 on the screen that you can see on the left-hand side. Those are the green boxes that indicate that we're meeting our management objectives for the given year. Again, it's important to note that the numbers that you're seeing here are this year's abundances with last year's fishery. And so for Chinook, folks will remember that we had a 14% impact rate for Willapa River and Nasell River. And you see here, the first 2 green boxes are 13.6% and 12.7%. You can also see with Coho, we managed to the escapement goal. And for chum, last year we managed to 10%, and that'll be different this year since we're out of that penalty box, as Marlene suggested. If you're looking over to the right-hand side of your page, the yellow box on the top is the total commercial days that are scheduled by stat week. And it also provides how many days in each area are available to fish, and the fishery objectives on the side. So whether it be tangle net or closed or mark selective fishery or retention. So that kind of gives you an idea of that. On the bottom are the recreational regulations. And so this describes what area you're in. So on the far left of that box, you can see the area, the section of the area. And again, this was last year's fisheries, but it kind of sets us up really nice for you to kind of just quickly look at this and see what each section of the river is doing and time of year and whether you can have a 2-pole or not. So there's a lot of information there. And again, if folks want to dive deeper into this, the Willapa Bay team is happy to walk anybody through this, this page. Next slide, please.
Jody, we have a couple people with their hands up. Is this a good time, or should we wait till you're done with this slide?
I think if we could, it'd be great to, this kind of breaks it down. This next slide breaks that piece down a little more. So
Yep.
if we could
Go
wait.
right ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry to
okay,
interrupt.
thanks. No, that's okay. So this slide here is really just a breakdown of that last slide. It's exactly the same numbers that come from all of those, all those tables, but in smaller pieces. So this top box here where it says Model A, this, again, like I said, breaks it down really nicely. It's your expected natural Chinook impact rate, modeled from last year's fisheries, your expected escapement, the total expected harvest by sector, and the allocation by sector, and then the number of commercial days that were scheduled. And the bottom one with the yellow titles there, that describes the fishery and what the fishery might look like. And it's important to note that the model that we're sharing with you tonight is Model A, and that'll be our starting model. And that will change over time as we receive more fishery suggestions over this next month. So tonight we're starting with Model A, and the next time we meet, we hope to have, as many suggestions as you guys can provide us to model. Next slide, please. And then lastly, we would just wanted to share with you that this is the current fisheries suggestion that we've received to date. So far we've received one from the Nasell River. And to reiterate, that's why we're here tonight, to listen to you guys, to take down your fisheries suggestions. And ultimately our goal is for the next time that we meet with you is to provide you with modeled selections that meet all of our management objectives that you guys have provided to us. So once again, I just want to thank you for taking the time to let us present to you tonight. And that's really all that I have to share with you about our models. And at this time, we could take your fisheries suggestions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody. Let's see, we have a person on the phone, a 360 number ending in 425. I've asked you to unmute.
Press pound to continue.
Hey, it's Francis Estelila. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Ron Warren said we should identify ourselves as advisors, and I am a REC advisor since the inception of the Willapa Advisory Group. I just wanted some clarity as to what exactly that Chinook guidance was passed at the commission. When I read it, I thought the two big changes were we're going to go to 20%, despite my previous objections and the objections of every REC and conservation advisor that you have that testified at the last meeting. I just want that on the record. We're going to go for 20 because that's your marching orders. But I also read that the other change was we would lift the restrictions before Labor Day in the south of the bay. But it didn't say anything about 2T. And I see in your model, you've got days scheduled in 2T starting the week of Labor Day. So that's a really bad gear conflict issue with your REC fleet out in the bay, okay? Number one, that fleet is already hamstrung by the horribly reduced production out of Forks Creek hatchery. Yeah, it's starting to get bumped up a little bit because of some tweaks the commission has made about releasing them where you collect them. Originally, that was going to be a primary population with much reduced hatchery production, but we know that REC fleet is their success and their ability to encounter fish is directly tied to the Forks Creek production. So we're already at a huge disadvantage. Hook and line, single barbless with greatly reduced hatchery production for Chinook in the north of the bay. And now you're going to throw gill nets on top of us before the middle of September. And it's just, that's untenable. I'm sorry. So can I get some clarity about what the marching orders were? Were the liberalization of the commercial fleet supposed to be just in the south of the bay in early September, or the whole bay is wide open for commercial fishing for the month of September?
Thank you, Francis, for your question. I'm going to allow Chad to answer this one since he has the most experience with the policy and what goes on in the bay. So Chad, can you take this one?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Mark. And Francis, you're right on the mark with the management objectives that were handed down. The interim guidance that we received from the commission. The area and time restrictions were struck from the areas in the south end of the bay, south of area 2T. What you see in the model run you have before you, and that was sent out tonight, and what Jody went through in great detail, great job, Jody, was basically last year's fishery package. So not what we're proposing for this year, just last year's fisheries on this year's abundance to use as a tool to see where we would start shaping fisheries. So with that, there were some days last year in the 2T area prior to September 16th. We know we got to do shaping there. Those days won't work with the management objectives we have moving forward this year. So once again, it's our what we like to call our NALF run, new abundances on last year's fisheries, and just as a way to start the conversation about where there's opportunities and where there are constraints so we can better shape the fishery moving forward. That's all.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I want to make my objection to those 2T days, highly noted for the recreational community. Just have it on record, objecting to days planted in there, stat weeks 37 and 38.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely. We got that. We'll capture that. I'm sure Barb's writing down all the suggestions that we get this evening. And once again, those days don't work with the interim guidance that we have right now. So we know we've got to do some shaping at the commercial fishery. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm out.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Chad. Appreciate that. Not sure if we want to try Tim Hamilton again, but I see his hands up, so I'm going to give him a chance. Thought I had you for a second there, Tim.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. For a second, I could. Well, we could hear you for a second, Tim, but then we lost you again. Not quite sure what happened. Well, let's move to the next one. So I see a 360 number ending in, oh, I see Tim's there. Tim, do you want to try again? Nope, just lost Tim. All right. I see a 360 number ending in 793. I'm allowing you to talk. You should be unmuted. It's showing up as you're unmuted on our end, but we're not hearing you.
How about now?
I hear you now.
Okay, now we got it. Okay, so anyway, I appreciate the model here, but without being able to work on the model, I mean, I could throw suggestions out all day long, but until we actually get to work on the model, and then, you know, it's going to be hard to give suggestions. How about that? So, when would it be possible to get the model? How about that? And work on it so we can provide some meaningful suggestions without taking an hour and say, well, what about this day and what about that day?
So I'm a little bit of a disadvantage here since I'm pretty new to the how things have been done in the past. I guess what I'm hearing you suggest is you need to have the model in your hand to be able to play with it. I don't know what the staff plans were for sharing. So
yeah, I don't know either, but I mean, we've always, it's been open to anybody that wanted it before, so I don't know why that would be different now.
So, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know what's been put on the website. I didn't have a chance to look at it today. Is it not on the website for people to use?
Mark, if I can.
Please, Jody, go ahead.
Hi, Andy, this is Jody. We'd be happy to send out a model to you if that's what you're requesting.
I think that would save a lot of time and energy on everybody's part, yes.
Sure, we can definitely do that.
That would be great. Thank you very much.
You're
So
welcome.
until then, you know, we'll work on our, work it within the parameters of the guidance and go from there. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks, Jody. So I see a 360 number ending in 425. I've asked you to unmute.
Hey, this is Francis Estelila. That's my number, but I've already had a chance to speak until we get to another topic that raises another interest. I'm out for now. Just listening in. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Next number we have is a 360 ending in 932. There we go.
Hi, this is Ross.
Ross, welcome.
This is season suggestions. Is that right?
Please.
Okay, two. One in the NEMA, we're down to a 2 fish limit. A lot of surplus fish show up, and due to inability to dredge below the weir and so forth, there are disease problems. There's a very disproportionate number of bucks. But we certainly like making egg take, which we did last year. So my season suggestion for the NEMA this year is, for Chinook, is 3 fish, only 1 hen, all unmarked. I mean, all marked. So you can get 2 bucks in a hen, 3 total, but no more than 1 hen. That's one suggestion I have. They'll cut down on the crowding, and they surplus 8,000 bucks up there, hatchery ones. And surely when they get crowded, whenever the rain draws them up, that would help. And so that's one suggestion. The second suggestion is we need to open up the nasal if it's a Chinook priority. And as I understand, it's a float-only rule until October 15th. If it isn't, it should be only float, under float. But last year when I quit checking the rack reports, there were 18,000 surplus hatchery coho at the Nasal hatchery, and the upper stretch of the river was closed. It should be open, and twitching should be allowed only under a float during the float rule. And whatever the regular Chinook limit is in the Nasal, I think it's 2. Because they're trying to make egg take, so I wouldn't. But those are my 2 suggestions. Understand those?
We got them down, Ross. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next hand raised, it just says Galaxy S21.
Because they have an older version of Zoom, I had to promote them.
Gotcha.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi. Okay. I think what I'm getting is this model is basically what we did last year. Is that correct?
That is correct, except it's built with the abundances that are forecasted to return for this year. So it's last year's fisheries with this year's abundances.
Okay. So during your presentation, you mentioned that there was a poor forecast for coastal coho.
In a number of systems, yes.
Okay. The model shows a 2 fish wild retention for coho in the marine area. I want you to take a look at the policy where it talks about shared opportunity between the marine area and tributaries. That was done last year. It was not in compliance with the policy, number 1. But number 2, we have not made coho escapement for 4 of the last 5 years. There should be 0 wild retention of coho in the bay until we have a 5 years, that before this policy went into place, that was the standard. It showed up on all the escapement reports at the bottom. 5 years, you got to get escapement, and we haven't done it in 4 of 5 years. This management of the coho is just destroying our lake coho runs, and that just simply is unacceptable, and we need to fix that. But allowing any retention in the bay and not allowing it in the tributaries, which I'm totally against, is in violation of the policy. So I would really like you guys to take a really hard look at that and try to do some conservation. So the nacelle, before this policy went into place, met escapement by 2 or 3 times for like 6 to 8 consecutive years. And due to the management rules that have gone into place and some ocean conditions, you've just taken it down to our knees. It's just destroyed it, and we need to restore that wild run. So please take that into consideration. The other thing is, I was the one that submitted that jig head rule. I would really like you guys to take a hard look at that. You know, more than what it's happening to the resource, it's becoming a severe conflict with physical altercations, and something needs to be done there. And your enforcement folks are aware of that. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Next, Lance Gray. Lance, I've asked you to unmute. Can't hear you yet, Lance. Still can't get you.
Lance, we can see you muting and unmuting. We just can't hear you speaking.
Lance, I might suggest to you, like I did with Tim earlier, maybe try logging out and logging back in, and I'll definitely look for you on the hand if you want to give that a try. So I see Tim's on my list again with his hand up. I'm gonna allow Tim to talk and ask to unmute.
Can you hear me?
We got you, Tim. Little bit of an echo, but I hear you.
Pardon me 1 second. Okay, you still hear me?
We got you, Tim.
Okay. So my comments are fairly simple about process. You may not be aware of it, Mark, but we have always had access to the season models until of late. And we're different than elsewhere. We got a lot of folks, and including Andy and me and others, who rely on those models to present season options. And I don't know why the decision was reached to not do that any longer, but put them on a PDF file that doesn't do you anything. You can't do that. Okay. So it wasn't accidental in my mind. It was intentional. And I'd like you to take a look at that, figure out who did that and correct the problem, because we need the preseason forecast model. We need the previous year's current status on the run reconstruction. And we need the season model for setting seasons. And those are all readily available. They're all done. They're all accessible. And all it takes is to punch send. And I want to strongly encourage you to fix that problem for us. That's one. Two, if there is a copy of a motion that was done on the floor of the commission, my understanding, there was a motion produced by staff that was read by a commissioner, and it leads confusion. We've had this problem 4 years in a row where we can't recognize what your season options are by what we saw happen in the commission. So I'd like you to present that, if you would, to us, any written documentation you have. And finally, I'd like you to acknowledge that the commission policy is still in effect, which includes a goal to restore natural spawners, to turn this cycle upwards with Chinook. And what you guys have habitually done is taken these pickles from the commission and claimed the only issue in front of you today is harvest. And now you've blocked all of our access to information, so that limits us to only talking about how many fish we kill. And we can't even figure out how many we can kill. So I'm really dissatisfied with that. And I'm asking you personally to go take care of it. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim. So what I heard from staff earlier from Jody was that those models would be going out to everybody. So I think that issue's already been taken care of. As far as what was presented to the commission, I don't know about any written documentation that was given to a commissioner, but we can definitely talk about that. I know the entire commission discussion and presentation is available for folks to go look at. And believe me, Tim, I totally understand that the current policy is in place, and that's our guidance to think about the conservation of these resources in Willapa Bay. So appreciate your comments. And we're going to go to Lance again. And I'm going to ask Lance to unmute himself. Still didn't get you, Lance. I see you unmuting yourself. Well, sorry you're not getting through, Lance. Nothing's more frustrating when technology doesn't work. Personal experience there. So I see Mike Wallace has his hand up.
Hello.
Hi, Mike.
Yeah, well, I usually don't speak at these, but I just, I fish Alaska as well as Willapa Bay and all over, and had some other suggestions or maybe some ideas, maybe out of the box, maybe not appropriate. But right now, just thinking to myself, have there ever been a thought of any of these river sport fishermen have a voluntary donate the eggs from these hens if that seems to be the problem? Has that ever been discussed?
So again, Mike, I'm a little new to the basin. I might kind of toss that one over to if James Losey's on the line or Jody or Barb. or Lyle, even if any of those suggestions have come up in the past.
Yeah, hey Mike. Yeah, so using volunteer broodstock collection is something we've used for a variety of species across the state. Specifically in Willapa Bay, I'm gonna lean on Chad for that. And there's probably other folks, constituents that have thoughts on whether we've ever done that have a long history in Willapa, but maybe Chad can just provide some idea if that's something we've explored for Chinook salmon, I think is what you're focused on, Mike, in Willapa Bay.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm just saying, if the females, well, my thought process is, it seems like I've heard this over and over again, that the NEMA never seems to have enough water. The fish pull up there in hot water, get diseased, like the other sportsman was saying. I fish up north die pack. That one hatchery die pack is near as big as NEMA. And, we have returns of 6 million chums. My thought process, why don't you, forget about the damn kinks and the NEMA and release maybe 30 million chums. And those, I don't know if you know, like Valdez, they have so many chums and pink they release, they have up to 20% returns on coho. There'd be more fish for all the sport fishermen. Us commercial guys would have something we can make money with and take some of the stress off of trying to go for a handful of kings that, don't make enough money in my mind. I don't care. I want to just make money. I don't care what species I'm catching. That's just my suggestion. Maybe look at die pack and see, maybe do a nonprofit, turn it into not do nonprofit, but maybe get a little tax from the fishermen. I'm sure they'd be fine if they were making money and catching real volume of fish, not just a handful here and there. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, thanks. Yeah. The assumption that chum salmon would perform better in NEMA than Chinook salmon, I think is a fair one in terms of hatchery production. The disease issue, I think you're sort of highlighting the idea that the disease issues linked to density and climate, environmental issues there. So yeah, hear what you're saying. I think it's a big idea. We've noted it. So yeah, thanks for sharing.
All right. Thank you. That's all I got. Thank you.
I would just add on to what James is saying. We do have a history of utilizing volunteer brood stocking to collect eggs for our chum program. It's not something that's been looked at in terms of collecting broodstock for Chinook, but we have used and continue to use voluntary broodstocking efforts to achieve our chum egg take goals. So,
thanks, Chad.
Thanks for the question, Mike.
Greg Mcmillan has his hand up. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, you get me?
We have you, Greg. Go ahead.
Right, good deal. Yeah, I've got a simple question. On the interim guidance that we have at a 20% rate and a recreational priority, does it give a specific percentage for each user group, or is it, what do we got there with that?
So I don't want to misspeak. My recollection is that the guidance was to allow for up to 20%. And I'm not sure that it gave specific guidance, but please, one of the other staff correct me if I'm wrong.
So I think I can take this one, Mark. Appreciate the question, Greg. The interim guidance that we received this year did not have specific allocations within the 20%. But I would note on the slide that was shown earlier, maybe we could pull that back up, management objectives for Chinook for 2021, Kyle. I think it's slide 13, I believe. No, I'm off. It's later than that. Keep going. Right here. One back. Slide 15. There we go.
Kyle.
So if we see under the determined daily limits for recreational fisheries, you see that the season length to achieve the recreational priority for Chinook. So I think we would plan on recreational fisheries, specifically the marine area and those freshwater fisheries that we have kind of prosecuted being in place first. and then utilizing the remaining impacts to provide for commercial fisheries would be how I would see that working out as we move forward through the process.
Okay, and I've got a couple other comments really quick. I really think we should keep this Nacelle River closed to the forebridge from the hatchery till the October 16th. I think these said it last year, said it again, said it year before, that these fish need to have a place to hold up and not be harassed while the water conditions are low and not very good for them to live. And then, yeah, I think that twitching jig rule in the nacelle would be a good rule. It definitely might stop a lot of illegal fishing. So thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. Next up is a 360 ending in 425.
Hey, it's Francis back again. So a couple of things came up since I talked last. Ross, I think, had a brilliant suggestion of if you're having trouble meeting your egg take goals, you got problems with pre-spawn mortality, putting a 1 hen limit sounds like a reasonable thing to do. This is something I've put on the table in other management venues outside the state of Washington. And one of the biggest things that always comes up from the managers is, and why it always goes down in flames, is they say, well, how would you really want us to have the public distinguish between a male and a female salmon? That's simply too hard for the average Joe Blow to do. And I disagree 1000%. It's very easy. And you don't have to look at the shape of the head. You don't have to look at anything but one feature. Every Willapa origin Chinook comes in so ripe when they're in the river. Every female is going to have an ovipositor showing. It might be a nipple. It might look like a huge hemorrhoid, but it's there. You're not going to miss it. So if you do put on a rule where you're going to be asking people to distinguish what they retain on the basis of sex, I think it would be highly educational to post a picture of what an ovipositor looks like and the varying degrees of ovipositor that you might see on a bright fish with just a little nipple sticking out versus one that's darker and there's 1.5 inches of it sticking out. It's unmistakable. All right. There's no coastal Chinook that you're not going to be able to see that. So I would just be disappointed that the suggestion would go down in flames because you don't think the public can tell the difference. Okay. You expect us to tell the difference between a Coho and a Chinook. This is far easier to do. I'll go on to another point. One of the other speakers said that he was the one that proposed the no twitching jig rule. I actually ran this by a prominent regional fishing forum where there are lots of participants that can see this. And the overwhelming feedback was that why would you take away a legitimate fishing technique that does work? Not saying it can't be abused. Every fishing technique can be abused, okay? Snaggers are snaggers are snaggers. You can regulate them down to whatever you want, but if there's a pokey piece of metal involved, they'll find a way to ram that son of a gun to a salmon that doesn't want to bite, okay? So you can't penalize people for using a variety of techniques. Twitching is a legitimate way to catch salmon. They bite it with a fury when they want to bite, and if they don't want to bite it, they won't bite it. But anybody can start ripping through the water to snag fish. You shouldn't take away the technique, okay? And so the overwhelming feedback was enforce the rules that are already on the books. Don't make more rules. Don't make it more complicated. Don't add complexity. Don't micromanage. Enforce the rules that are on the books. If an enforcement officer thinks someone is attempting to hook fish that is not willfully chasing the gear, write them a damn ticket. Easy. That's enforcement. They don't think it'll stick. Well, that's up to the judge. Okay. But write the ticket. Most of the people are not going to spend the time to go to court because they don't have the time or the money to do that. Write them a ticket and let the chips fall where they may, but don't take away the technique. Let's see, one other thing. Oh, coho. Someone asked about why do you let people retain wild coho in the marine fishery? The reason why is because gear is already in the water. The gear is there impacting the fish regardless. Impact continues to accrue until the gear is removed from the water. I think this is probably my #1 most oft-repeated broken record speech that I give for the last 20 years doing these meetings. The gear's there, the impact is happening. Coho are a horrible catch and release fish in transition water, okay? If the scales are falling off the fish, they're too fragile to catch and release. All you got to do is look at the damn things crossways and they die. All right, throw a hooking event and a fight into it, you got a dead fish. In the best of hands, I'd say, you know, not touching the fish. The hook is somewhere on the outside of the mouth, never went into the mouth to puncture any of the vital structures that will bleed profusely. And using a dehooker and not putting the fish in the net and dehooking that fish, you'll probably lose half the fish. And I know that goes against everything you guys have ever put out in all of the literature, but I've seen it with my own eyes, and I never question the evidence of my own eyes. And I've seen good hook and release studies on coho from Alaska. Hook and release coho in tide water carries a 70% mortality across all gear types, sport fishing on the Little Susitna River in Alaska. And on ADFNG research projects, the simple act of collecting fish for research and letting them go carries with it a 40% mortality in tide water without a hooking event. There's no added stress. So that's a long-winded way of saying we're going to be encountering those coho. If you force us to release wild coho in the bay, you're just creating free food for the seals and the sea lions and feeding the crabs. The best and highest use of that fish, if it is encountered, is in the bottom of the fisherman's box, okay? They're just not a good catch and release fish. And so we have used this same principle in Grace Harbor. There is precedent for it. We've gone so far in Grace Harbor as to say, if you're going to make us sort for wild coho in the bay, why bother putting us out there? You're just going to make us kill fish. Grace Harbor is the #1 producer of wild coho in the state. And if there's a conservation concern that we can't get to them, we just soon not fish for them rather than have to sort for them, because it's a sham to hook fish and kill them outright if you're not going to put them in the box. So the other part of that is the other precedent we have set in Grace Harbor when we have had this in the marine areas and in the tidal estuary in river, tidal main stem. We have made the distinction that we know this mortality is high. We let people keep a wild coho that they encounter, but further upriver, when the fish have had a chance to armor themselves, the scale set, they got thick ropey slime, their immune system is good, they've made the osmoregulatory physiologic change to be able to handle life in fresh water again. That's a good fish to catch and release. That fish is going to do just fine. I'll go back to that study I talked about in Alaska, where the Fish and Game guys were just collecting fish for research, taking samples and letting them go. When they moved their site upriver out of tide water, the mortality rate was cut by more than 50% just on handling. Again, no hooking event, but it's strictly the location. So you want to make us sort wild coho in the bay. I think that's bad juju. Oh, one more thing, one more precedent. In fact, Phil Anderson gave the agency a D- for trying to prosecute a selective coho fishery with gill nets. It was a horrible, horrible experiment. I'd love to say we told you so, but it was. Phil himself gave that fishery a D- in a public forum at Grays Harbor College, probably about, I don't know, when did we do it? A dozen years ago. It's not good on commercial fishing. It's not good in sport fishing. So, you know, if you don't want us to kill wild coho, I don't know how you can put us on the water with it, with any clean conscience. All right, that's what I got. Thank you.
Appreciate your thoughts as always, Francis. Next, let's go to Cindy.
Can you hear me?
I can, Cindy. Welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm a landowner on the Nacelle River, and I own property above the Highway 4 bridge. And I don't follow the detailed reports that you guys have out here. And let me just say, I'm very impressed with how you put everything together. But I wanted to confirm that there will be no fishing allowed above the bridge until at least October the 16th, like we had this last year. And as I said, I'm not reading things, so I don't know if that's been confirmed or not. And I'd also like to confirm that you will not be advertising the fishing grounds, which I understand might be up and coming. And how will Fish and Wildlife assure me that there'll be no trespassing on my private property? And during this time, Fish and Game is up in the woods, dealing with all of the illegal hunting going on. And it's very difficult to have them come down when I see illegal activity on the river, which is happening on a daily basis. And I'm also finding that there are quite a few fishermen that come down that, I don't know, they like meth, they like heroin, I don't know what it is, but there's physical confrontations that are happening, and it's very scary. And I want to know, if these people are caught, are they banned from fishing in the location that they're caught in, or are they just given a ticket? And the last thing that I wanted to say is I would also like to see the twitch and jig banned on the Nacelle River. Thank you very much. And if anybody can answer any of these questions for me, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm not sure I'm the person to answer all of them. I may be able to answer one or two, but I might start with James Losey as the regional program manager to see what he can answer first.
Yeah, you got it. Hey, Cindy, thanks for that. There's a number of questions. I started writing them down there, but I might have lost track. So, you know, you can reach out to me afterward too if you want to discuss this. If I remember right, I think we met last year, but it's a little hard over Zoom to remember. I think these are same issues you brought up. The major one that I think was sort of linking a bunch of those was enforcement. We have enforcement challenges, you know, throughout the state, but we're proud of what enforcement does in Willapa Bay. And it also, I think, ties together. You were discussing or sort of asked this question about whether we're promoting fisheries in the Willapa Bay area. I think that's what the question was. And there's kind of two parts to that. The truth is we are promoting fisheries, and we're really proud of the opportunity we provide people both in freshwater and marine to interact with the resource, you know, in Willapa Bay and across the state. But we're not promoting people to enter land unlawfully. So that's not something that we promote or encourage. So if there's specific issues on your property, then I think the easiest way to handle that is we just get in better contact with each other. And when you see that type of behavior, you just let us know in real time, and we get enforcement there as quick as we can. So I hope that answered a few of those questions.
So I think I see Lance. Lance, were you able to get connected?
Yep. Is that working?
We got you, Lance. Welcome.
Okay, I'm here. Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you very much for putting another meeting together. I know you guys are all meeting about every 15 minutes and some other things. So a couple of things I I almost started laughing when Francis, when you were saying you didn't want to micromanage and then you wanted to put out the state to put out a picture and teach people how to tell female from male. And we tried to do that. And I agree with you that you probably could tell it before you land it. But there's a lot of people that I think have that problem, and it's an issue. And it's the same issue that we have with the jigging, in the Nacelle River. I don't know if they do it in other rivers, but I would assume they do. And in watching it, it's I don't know if you've come down here and watched it, Francis, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that would like to do it because it's a very effective way to catch fish that won't bite. And it becomes very frustrating for a person that doesn't want to fish illegally, that doesn't want to catch fish illegally. And I think you know as well as I do, if somebody lands a fish that they want to take home and it happens to be in a tail, they take it home. So I agree with the no twitching rule. I understand the no, we don't want to take things away. Trust me, I know all about what we don't want to take away, but we'd not like to lose. But in our fishery, one thing I'd like to speak to tonight, and I'm not here to jump on anyone, but I have an issue, and I think it stems and it would create a much better fishery for all of us. And I think it's the fact that we don't have the money or the people in Willapa Bay to actively find how many natural fish we have. I'm having a lot of trouble looking at numbers in our fishery, which I believe, as you'll tell us, are not selective. I don't believe any fishery is selective as to what fish they catch, but our numbers of natural fish are greatly, higher than the numbers we're getting back on a spawning ground. And I believe, and I don't have a biology degree. I don't have any degree, but from fishing and living there as long as I have, I believe that we are just not able to encounter those fish when they reach the rivers. And I think it's affecting every commercial fishery, sport fishery. It's affecting where our final number is on how many natural fish we got. It makes us look like we're not doing anything. And I'm very frustrated with it. I believe that we should, and this is my suggestion, we should look to work together with, Rex and commercials and the state. And that's a real crazy idea, I know, but, and try to come up with a plan where we get more accountability for our natural fish, because I believe in our rec fishery in the bay and our commercial fishery in the bay, we see much higher numbers of natural fish that the state, and I'm not jumping on anybody in the state because they're tasked with way too many streams and way too many rivers and high water to try and find these fish. I believe that taking our commercial fishery and test fisheries once a week with observers on board and whatever observer information we can get from a sport fishery, that we start to work for how many natural fish we see in our bay as the number of natural fish we see returning. Because if we keep going down this road, and if you would go look at this year's Coho fishery, for us on the 15th of September, we harvested a large number of coho. There was a lot of coho there in area M, and we harvested about, I think it's real close, between 25 and 30% natural coho. When those fish hit the hatchery, it's less than 1%. It's very, and we see the same thing in our Chinook fishery. So I don't know if I'll ever get anywhere, but I'm going to keep beating on this until I hopefully do, or I die, which I don't know which will come first, but I have a huge problem with us ending the season and all of us fighting about, oh, you didn't make this escapement, you didn't make that escapement, it's the commercial's fault, it's the sport's fault. I think we need to work together and try to come up with a plan. It's been done in other places. This is not a plan that, oh, Lance Gray has a novel idea. This has been done in other water systems where they do commercial fishing to evaluate what they have, whether it be how many steelhead are around, how many natural fish are around, what the run makeup is. And I believe, because we are not able to pick out just hatchery fish or just wild fish, that our fishery, and I believe that also happens in a sport fishery, would show you a much better number of natural fish that we have returning. So I would be happy to sit down with anybody in the state and have them explain it to me. And it's going to have to be pretty simplified so that I understand it, where we're losing all of these fish. Because I think it's an inability to capture them, and we will never have that ability, money-wise or manpower-wise, to do it. And I think we're all going to fail at reaching goals, because I believe we were way over our coho goal. I believe that our chum goal our in chum number was much higher than what we were. And I don't know how we do it without hiring about 50 people to go out there and stand on every stream and be there for every high and low water. It's just not possible. So that's my 2 cents for tonight. I think we should try to figure out a way to get a better return number on natural fish, a better handle on it.
Thanks for that, Lance. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, Lance, last year, this time you shared with me what I'll just call this kind of math problem with the natural origin Chinook. And it seemed like your observations weren't really lining up with what you see in the spreadsheets this time of year. And so we discussed it maybe for 2 or 3 minutes and said, yeah, we should circle back around this summer and talk through the numbers. And we didn't do that. And so, the first part of this, I think, is just understanding the work Lyle Jennings and Jody Pope do out with their stock assessment team, understanding where they see natural origin fish and where they don't. And if this kind of math problem that you're describing is one that we need to solve, I think we do it together, like you said. And we probably won't solve it tonight, but I think it's one that we probably follow through with over the coming months before the season starts, and make sure we're on the same page. And then the other piece, and so I'm available to help with that work if you are too. And I don't think a college degree is the thing that's going to get in the way. I think it's just finding the time to make it work. But then the other piece of it is this idea that the GillNet has information to offer us in season that maybe we're not utilizing. And so we're talking a lot and thinking hard about how we can develop an in-season update tool using the GillNet to inform the run size in season. And so the challenge, better than anyone, is that the GillNet fishery has moved from marine area to marine area with different gear types, different, mark selective rules. And so it's really hard to find that consistent pattern that we can rely on to give us information about the run in season. That said, we're exploring some of those tools, and we hope to develop them in coming years, if not sooner. And there's also the last thing I'll say is, creative work that we could do to put our heads together to develop a new set of tools. Design the fishery in a way that it will guaranteed provide us something that we don't currently have. And I'm not sure that's something we've worked hard enough at, but these are all sort of topics that we could set aside a couple hours here in coming weeks and start talking through them.
Yeah, I don't know if I unmuted again or not, but
we hear you, Lance.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, I know this is not something we're going to solve overnight. And I know it's not something we're going to solve before north of Falcon, because you guys are all very busy between now and then. That's probably not something we can even talk about because everybody's overwhelmed, especially with the way meetings are going. But I feel like, it's very important that we get started on something, because I'm sure it's going to take years of, trying to collect data to make something that makes sense. So, I'm willing to do whatever, because I firmly believe that we are in a much better place on those fisheries, chum, wild coho, wild Chinook than what we were able to capture. And so that's all I have. And I'll, like I said, I'll get lots of time now. So, okay.
Hey, one last thing there, Lance. So you're right. We're extremely busy. You're super busy, but this is the kind of stuff we have time for. So I'll send an email out here in the next week. We can just set up a quick, 1 hour discussion, you and I, and just get the thoughts on paper, and then we can figure out how to move forward with it.
Thanks, James. It looks like Greg Mcmillan is next.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I'd like to, support what Lance just said there. There's ways. And I think a lot of it, some of it, as far as finding where these fish goes, we just have to look in different places instead of, I think we found that in Grays Harbor, that worked, in different areas. You just got to look for them. And I also, as a landowner on the Naysel River, I really agree with what Cindy said. And I just wanted to give her, some backup on that too, because it is bad. Trespassing is terrible. And nobody wants to see people walking through their backyards at 5 a.m. with flashlights, walking through their yard. And it happens. It happens a lot. And then the flip side to that, the only other option is for them to walk down the river, which is legal. But I don't understand, I don't understand the theory of walking through the spawning beds to go fishing. And I think that's what, that's why it's been closed for, as long as it had been prior to being reopened. It's just I think it's a good policy. These fish have to have a place to where they're not harassed. I mean, it's incredible to see the fish when they're sitting there in the warm water. And I just wanted to I thought that was well thought of Cindy, and I back her up. I'm just above her a little bit and on the river, and it is a problem. And like she said, law enforcement is busy in 100 different directions that time of the year. And so yeah. But yeah, I really think a lot of this escapement issue and these numbers, because they don't make sense. We see it in our fisheries, and nobody at the state has been able to tell us why this is. And I think a lot of it has to do with is they're not looking for these fish. You guys are stuck in certain systems. This is what you do. Anybody that lives, and I'm just speaking for my area or the area that I live in, anybody that lives in Naysel will tell you that there was more chum last year. It was ridiculous. I mean, they were everywhere, and you got to look in Davis Creek. You got to look in Del Creek. You got to look at these places where they're at. I mean, geez, you couldn't hardly drive down the road without smelling them 2 miles before you got to the creek. So I would just encourage you guys to do that, because it affects all these fisheries. I mean, both sport and commercial. I think there's more fish there than we're getting credit for. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. Looks like the next one is Galaxy S21. It's like I'm asking to unmute, but it doesn't want to work. Not sure if Leah's still on the line.
I'm trying to unmute as well. Just a reminder to dial *6 to unmute if you're on your cell phone, which it looks like you are.
Well, maybe we'll come back. looks like Ross has his hand up again. Go ahead, Ross.
Yeah, this is Ross.
Go
You hear
ahead.
me?
We can.
I've been asking for some information that relates to conservation, which I don't think has come out of the policy. First, I'd just like to say that I think it's a sad situation where we've got some guidance and even WDFW can't tell us exactly what it is. It's a pretty sad situation. We've been down that road before. We go to a meeting and there's the interim guidance laying on the table that we never heard of. That needs to be fixed, and I'll certainly tell my commissioner the same thing. But you got to get your act together there. You're running models and you don't know what the interim guidance is. It's really sad. I've been asking for red counts in all the streams, PHOS and PNOB, for 3 months. And the answer I get is, well, maybe it'll be in the next presentation. And it's never there, okay? And if conservation hasn't been removed from our policy, if that's the goal of it, to restore wild runs, and you don't know red counts, PHOS, and PNOB, how as a member of public can you make intelligent recommendations? You can't. And so you need to fix that, or this is too much of a facade. As far as some of these folks that would like to net fish in the bay and then give them a place to rest in the river where the sport fishermen can't go, I understand that. I'd probably like just the opposite, okay? I'm not asking for that. I think that's a little ridiculous, okay? I think we all have a place where we can fish and we have the rules, trespassing and so forth. If we need more enforcement, we should get it. If somebody's high on drugs and hitting each other, then I think we call the sheriff. But I just don't know how we can have discussions year after year without even knowing the red counts, PHOS, and PNOB. As far as the large numbers of chum, been on this bay full time for 18 years, and I've seen the 70 and 80,000 chum runs when the tide went out, and it's real obvious. They're splashing and slopping every place. The seals are trapping them against the bank and the whole 9 yards. Okay, have not seen that for years. Did not see it this year, so I don't know how big the chum run was, but it was not. It was not a monster run. I've seen them, and I saw no indication of that this year. But we can't be having any more meetings without the interim guidance spelled out in writing. We shouldn't even be talking anymore after this meeting without that in front of all of us. Please email us the interim guidance. I understand there was a motion, and in some form it passed in the commission. And the answer I get is go listen to the 2-hour meeting. Not going to happen. What are these meetings for? Give us the basics. Thank you.
Thanks, Ross. So I believe we did go through the basics of the guidance in the presentation, and as well as there was a news release from the agency, I believe, that had that guidance in it as well. So I see that Francis has his hand up again. Go ahead, Francis. There we go. Go ahead.
This is Andy again.
Sorry, Andy.
I take offense to that. It's fine. One thing what Lance said, he said his observations, those percentage rates are documented because we're highly monitored. So those are not just his observations. Those are, the state has those percentages in our fisheries. So I would like that to be noted. It's not just something he's making up. Those are documented numbers. That's all I got. And
okay.
You know that, and I don't think the jig thing in the nacelle, it's not removing it. I think it's only removing it for a time frame, if I read it right, till the 15th of October. And another way to promote snagging. So I would support that. request from the recreational fisheries. That's where that came from. It didn't come from me, but I would support that. Thank you.
So I see we're going to go back to the Galaxy S21. I've asked you to unmute. It's like we're still having some issues there.
Remember, *6 is to toggle unmute on your phone.
Well, I just might offer, if you have a specific question or you want to reach out, there's an email address up here on the screen that if you send it to that, somebody will get your email and respond. So I would encourage anyone to please do that. So I see Tim has his hand up again. Go ahead, Tim.
Have you got me?
I do have you, Tim. Go ahead.
I've got the following comments. I know, Mark, you're new. And I know that James is, and so is Miss Wagner. But you need to understand the history in Willapa Bay. We started years ago with closed advisory meetings behind closed doors, where the people were sworn to secrecy to divide up the fish between themselves. We had to go through 5 litigations to open these meetings up. They wouldn't give us information. We had to sue them, your department, repeatedly, okay? And this has been the case. It starts clear back in the days when they created a model and the model wouldn't show the season they wanted to put in, especially for the commercial fleet. And all of a sudden the model changed and we had to go figure out, after 500 hours of studying models with experts, what they'd done to make that system always that selected season they wanted to fit. We would point it out to the commission, at which time all of a sudden we couldn't find the change. And we did find the change eventually on a spreadsheet, 3 to 4 sheets blank to the right with white font on white background. Now you need to understand that I agree with Lance. We can't figure out what's going on because we have a habit that has been delivered to us by this department where we can't trust what the department says. We have policy decisions with, I want a nod from Kelly Cunningham. We can't figure out what it is that the commission voted on, and so on and so on. And then we come into a meeting a few days later and they give us an interpretation of what actually happened that doesn't match what we heard with our own 2 eyes. For us to fix this problem, we have to, as Lance says, sit the people down and cooperate. But you have to understand the biggest impediment we have is that no one that I can find can trust this department. And it's unfortunately a difficult position for you. I apologize to James. I apologize to Jody. I apologize to everybody but Chad, because Chad knows. So how do we get over this? How do we fix the resource? How does the public provide input to this department when this distrust is this great? Now, as far as your comments, I disagree. I didn't ask for the Excel spreadsheet that Andy asked for. Andy asked for one. I asked for 3. Now I know Miss Wagner knows what all 3 of those are. So I'll hopefully find out that that's what she's going to do, because there's 3 spreadsheets that you need. And in those spreadsheets, you will find the answer to, like, Ross's problems. You will find the answer to Lance's issues. You'll find the issues that Francis raises up. Okay, you'll find it all if you get those. And there is a reason why they cut that access off 2 years ago. There's a reason, okay? And it's not accidental. I'm sorry, it's not accidental. It was intentional. And so it's so hard for us to sit out here and work. And I hear, I'm going to pick on Chad again, who I've known for all these years. And Chad said, oh, well, we've got these broodstock programs. Yeah, we do. I lost my right knee slipping on a rock, and it hurts every time it gets cold. Okay? There is no broodstock program in Willapa Bay, to my knowledge. And I can tell you personally, 3 different times on brood stocking for natural spawners, on different issues like that, protecting the POS and PBOB problem on the hatchery spawning grounds. We went publicly to this department and offered to help, and they rejected us soundly. Up yours with a rubber hose. Now, if you go up to a hatchery and you ask what's going on in the hatchery, and they tell you, the response comes back, I can't talk to you anymore. It's all about growing mushrooms. We don't grow mushrooms, we grow salmon. And it is a problem that will plague us to the point where we're on our way now, where we've come to the conclusion, many of us who insisted that policy in Willapa say, you will not manage and put us in ESA. Well, they have. They have. The policy is a protection from ESA, and it's worthless today because every pickle they've ran at us that has been maneuvered by the department staff is to increase harvest. So we don't have escapement goal on cohos 4 out of the last 6 years. Okay, we can't even get escapement goal 6 years later across the bar. And what is the department go to the commission with? Give us the ability to kill more. If we can just kill more. You couldn't sell that in a first-year biology class at Grace Harbor College if your life depended on it. So I'm saying to all of you newbies, to Mark, to all you, to James, to Miss Wagner, help, follow your knowledge and your principles and professionalism, help. Because if we don't get this fixed, the only opportunity that we have today is to call in the Yankees. We'd have to go out and ask NOAA to come in and do a review of ESA. You know what that'll do to us? But that's the choice that you put us in. Making a choice that you're going to do it anyway, and by the time you get us there, the children can never get out. It may require a preemptive strike, and that's where we're at right now. And you know, I've only met 2 people in Fish and Wildlife who wouldn't have in the barbecue in Mary's courtyard behind my house. It's not personal, it's professional. We wish you all well. We hope you go in peace and prosper, but do not do it in a way that puts my children and my people in harm's way. Do your job. And I thank you for the time. It's my right to have it. It wasn't here before because we had to sue the department to open the door. But with all that in mind, thank you and good night.
Thank you, Tim. Mike Wallace, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question here, I guess. Wasn't it a few years back that NOAA did come in and do a study on these king salmon and determined that there was basically the gene pool was the exact same from the hatchery fish and the ones that are now called naturalized salmon? Is that correct?
I'm gonna turn to a staff member from the region that's been here a while, Mike, to answer that. I don't know who wants to take it.
Yeah, genetic diversity is low. We know that now, but it's a little more nuanced than that.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a reason why we don't call them wild and we call them naturalized, correct? I mean, because they're not, they were, my understanding, all these king salmon we have now that we call natural were brought in years ago, and there's paperwork out there to back it up. These king salmon that we're all fighting over are actually not naturalized, or I mean, they're naturalized, but they're not natural to Willapa Bay. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Anyone?
So no, I mean, I think it's a longer discussion than that. Stray rate's really high, and we can see that in terms of genetic diversity. And so I think I get your point, though. It's fair to say that hatcheries have had a major influence on the population of unmarked fish in Willapa Bay. That's totally fair.
All right. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to be the devil's advocate here, but I mean, I don't know, in my mind, if we could just manage in river, since the gene pool's no difference, you don't have enough, of these naturalized kings. Can you just let some of the other hatchery fish go by the weir? And that, which did my understanding last year, there's a bunch of them that every year they go over the weir and they're up there anyways. So if we all just forgot about this naturalized word and just moved on to getting the amount of salmon in river management, and then let the fishermen, commercial and sports, I don't know. I just wanted to throw that in there. I just something that bothers me to think about, but that's all I got.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, we're getting close to the end of our scheduled meeting time. I don't want to cut anybody off. Let's see. I see a 360 ending in 793. Go ahead.
This is Andy again.
Go ahead, Andy.
So Mike is 100% correct. The state did that study. The difference between the natural fish and the hatchery fish is completely negligible. You could find no difference between any of the streams. And by the way, it's great to hear a new voice on the phone. And the other one is, per Tim's, we're looking for ESA. We have a letter that says, no, we're not worried about the Willapa, and you're going to have to do the entire ESU to get your ESA. The Willapa is not on NOAA's radar for an ESA listing. We have a recent letter, so that's not a true statement when he says that. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andy. Want to remind folks of our Grays Harbor meeting next week. I believe it's on Wednesday, the 24th. We'll be here in the evening having a similar discussion tonight, except about Grays Harbor Fisheries. Hope to see folks there who are interested. Also, just a reminder, the following Wednesday on the 31st, we'll have our second North of Falcon meeting, followed by a Willapa on the 5th and Grays Harbor on the 6th. I think staff is committed to get some stuff out to you guys tonight that you asked for. So we took all that stuff down, made notes. Just so folks are aware, this meeting was recorded tonight. It will be available up on the website sometime tomorrow, I'm presuming. Am I missing anything else, Marlene or James or Jody?
No, I thank everybody for the participation. And I've got a couple follow-up emails that we'll get out here in the next week. So thanks.
Thank you, James. And once again, echo what James said. We really appreciate everybody's time and participation tonight. We look forward to the next time we get to meet again. And until then, everybody be well and be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.